Welcome back. Let's continue talk about the price elasticity of demand. In the previous video, we already discussed four determinants of the price elasticity of demand. The availability of the close substitutes, the necessities versus luxuries, how narrowly you define the good or the market, short-term versus long-term, right? Now let's apply these ideas into the healthcare reform, which we discussed before, I know, back in chapter 4, right, when we talk about supply and demand. But we actually did not finish that discussion. Okay, healthcare reform, of course, it's a huge topic. Okay, we can probably spend the whole semester talking about just this reform. But here, I think, the discussion about the determinants of the price elasticity of demand is pretty closely related to this. Okay, if you remember back in chapter 4, we said that, why the healthcare market is so unique, because the demand for healthcare or Medicare treatment is inelastic, right? Or we could say very inelastic. In other words, people desperately want to get the medical treatment if needed, regardless of the price, okay, for most of us. Here, I would encourage you to think about what could determine its price elasticity of demand on this market, okay, based upon our discussion in the previous video. And also think about what should a government do, okay? Remember, back in chapter 4, we said that Democrats would like to have the government-sponsored single-payer system, right? Or sometimes people say universal coverage system, right? But Republicans seriously, challenge that. They believe that, the government-sponsored system, no matter it's healthcare or something else, are going to be inefficient. Okay, so the Republicans propose to have more healthcare providers, okay, on this market, so that would significantly lower the price per unit, okay, and even increase the quantity demanded. Okay. But what exactly government needs to do here to, to be able to bring more healthcare providers to the market, all right? Or even, on the demand side, how could we change that very inelastic demand, okay? Once again, think about what we discussed in the previous video and bring your thoughts to class and share with us, okay? So we're going to do that later in class. All right, so here, let's continue to talk about the variety of demand, okay? By that, we actually mean, when we think about the price elasticity of demand, we also think about the shape of the demand curve, as we discussed before, right? When we calculate the elasticity. So we said that, the elasticity actually measures the slope of the demand curve, okay? The flatter the curve, the more elastic the demand. In other words, a teeny tiny change in price could lead to a dramatic change in quantity demanded, right? The steeper the curve, the less elastic the demand. Or you could put it in the opposite way, the more inelastic the demand, right? So here you find that a huge increase or decrease in price would lead to a very small change in quantity demanded, okay? Now, in the next few slides, we're gonna give you more graphical and quantitative details about the slope of the demand curve, okay? There are 5 different cases or classifications of the demand curve we're gonna talk about, all right? Now, here is the very first one. It's called perfectly inelastic demand. This is a extreme case here. Again, percentage change in quantity over percentage change in price. If the demand curve is vertical, then you're gonna find when price falls by 10%, that's just, we arbitrarily pick one number, okay? You can try different ones for sure. Then here you would find that the quantity demanded doesn't change at all, okay? So go back to the formula, the denominator is going to be 10%, right? And the percentage change in quantity is going to be 0, right? So we find in this case, the price elasticity of demand is 0 when demand curve is vertical, okay? And once again, this means, intuitively, consumers' price sensitivity is long. Okay, they have already determined they're gonna buy Q1. Okay, they're not gonna change regardless of the price. Okay, how expensive or dirt cheap it is, it's not gonna change their mind. Okay, so here I would encourage you to come up with the real-world examples for a vertical, perfectly inelastic demand. Okay, and then we're going to discuss this in class. Now, what I would like to tell you ahead of time is it might be quite challenging here to come up with a very kind of strictly applicable case. Okay, but if you can come up with something close to this, it would be fine. In other words, maybe the demand curve is not, 100% vertical, but it's very, very close to vertical case. I think that should be fine. Okay. Again, I'm eager to learn the examples you guys can come up with. The second case would be inelastic demand. So here you find that the instead of have 100% vertical one, we have a downward sloping one. Okay, but very steep demand curve. Okay. So here in this case, you find that if price goes down by 10%, the quantity demanded would rise, okay? But the change in what quantity demanded is going to be less than 10%, okay? In other words, consumers are, their price sensitivity is relatively low, okay? So if we go back to the formula on the top of the slide, you would find that it's going to be less than 10%, whatever that number is. Could be 5%, could be 8%, right? Divided by 10%, which is a percentage change in price. So in this case, we would find that the price elasticity of demand is less than 1, okay? Or you could say, remember the vertical case, we discussed before, the elasticity is 0, right? So here you would say, if it's an inelastic demand, that means the elasticity ranges between 0 and 1, right? Once again, come up with some real-world examples. Okay, I believe this one is relatively easier for you to find some examples around you. Okay. The third case we're looking at is you find, again, a downward sloping demand curve, not as steep as the previous case. So here you find that, when price goes down by 10%, the quantity demanded rises by 10% as well. Okay. Again, you would find this is a pretty unique case. So the percentage change in quantity demanded and percentage change in price are exactly the same. So you find that on the top of the slide, the price elasticity of demand would be equal to 1. Okay. In this case, consumers are, their price sensitivity is intermediate. Okay. All right. Now, the fourth category or fourth case would be, again, we keep rotating the demand curve. In this case, it will be relatively flat. Okay. Or flatter than the previous cases we already discussed. Now here, again, we do 10% decrease in price, and you would find that the change in quantity demanded is larger than 10%. Okay, so if you go back to the formula on the top, you would find that here the elasticity must be greater than 1. Okay, again, here you find that consumers really care about the price. Okay, when price change, then they're gonna change more of their quantity demanded percentage-wise. Okay. Again, here I would encourage you to come up with some real-world examples for our class discussion. Okay. All right, the fifth and the final case we're going to discuss is another extreme case. This is a perfectly inelastic demand. I'm sorry, perfectly elastic demand, right? So in this case, the demand curve is horizontal, okay, 100% horizontal line. And in this case, you would find that when price changes, it's not gonna, I'm sorry, if the price doesn't change, for example, and then we could still see the quantity demanded change by any percentage, okay? Now I'll go back to the top of the formula, the top of the slides, the formula. It will be any percentage change in quantity divided by 0%. But we know that 0 cannot be used as a denominator, right? So what we actually mean here is there's a teeny tiny change in price, but the change in quantity could be infinite, okay? Could be extremely, extremely large, all right? So here you would find that, this ratio is going to be infinity, okay? That's the price elasticity for demand, okay? Again, this is, as we said, it's an extreme case, okay? And I still want you guys to come up with the examples for class discussion, okay? And the tricky thing here is, again, how, on what kind of things when price change just a little bit, then consumers or buyers are just going to respond in a dramatically, different way, okay? All right, so here we already discussed these 5 different cases or classifications for demand, okay? The goal of this, short lecture is to help you build a connection between the economic intuition, the mathematical calculation, and the graphical representation, okay? Or put it differently, when the price elasticity is 0 or less than 1, or equal to 1, greater than 1, or infinity. Under each case, what's going to be the shape of the demand curve? Okay, vertical, very steep, kind of the 45-degree line, right? Downward sloping line, or quite flat, or completely horizontal. Okay, so again, these are the things we want you guys to be familiar with. Okay, so in the next video, we're gonna start talking about how we could use the elasticity, the price elasticity of demand to figure out the firm's total revenue. Okay, like when price change, then how the total revenue for producers, sellers, firms are gonna change. Okay.